Perfect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mason Bloom. I'm a partner at Levene Chartered Certified Accountants based just up the road near Great Portland Street, Regent's Park. We currently act for over 2,000 members of the bar, from junior barristers to QCs, and I jointly head up the specialist barristers unit at the practice. My presentation today is half of it's going to be split on financing your career at the bar, and the other half is just going to give you some really important tips for hopefully when you do start as barristers, things you need to be aware about regarding tax, VAT, and all the various business expenses you can claim to offset against your income. So in terms of financing your career at the bar, there are a number of different sources of finance available out there. Everything that I'm about to impart to you this morning is available on the internet, so all of this information is in the public domain. Studying to become a barrister is an expensive undertaking, what with obviously all of the fees that you're currently incurring for your degree courses, and then funding the actual, I gather the name of the BPTC course has actually recently changed, and a number of institutions have got slightly different names. I'm going to refer to it as the Bar Vocational Course or Bar Vocational Studies, which was the historic BPTC, but the fees that you can incur for studying for these courses range from anything between 15,000 and 19,000. The course fees in London being slightly more expensive than outside of London, and course fees for the GDL anything up to sort of just under £12,000. So expensive courses. There is a combination of funding sources out there. The 4 Inns of Court, they all have a number of scholarships, bursaries, awards, and I'll talk through a bit more about those in a minute. Some of you may be fortunate enough to have parents that are able to support you through your studies, but from my experience, from most of my clients, that's not always there. So it's understanding exactly what is out there. Some of you may have savings, support from family. A number of the law schools actually provide scholarships for where they see there's an exceptional intellectual ability. So they will offer scholarships to really bright pupils, really bright students, and they do have some bursaries available for students where they feel they can't afford the course fees as well. There are a number of private institutions out there, banks and other lenders that will lend money for studies, and they're all in the form of loans. And if you're lucky enough to obtain a pupillage, then some barrister chambers will actually give you an advance on a pupillage award, so you're able to take that before you actually start your pupillage, and for some sort of commercial sets that can be quite a significant sum of money that you're able to draw down in advance of your pupillage award. There's a few other sort of awards out there. The Bar Council has an annual law reform essay competition, and the prize money totals up to £10,000. And there are some local authority awards, but they're fairly rare. So when you do apply for a scholarship to one of the inns, they've got about, I think it's just over 5 million of funding out there for scholarships and awards. And you need to be very careful about which inn you apply for, because the inn that you do apply for a scholarship is the inn that you actually have to become a member of, and the inns are all slightly different in terms of the members and the culture of the inns as well. So you need to pick the right inn that you're going to apply for a scholarship for. Focus on the best inn that you've got the best chance of success. You don't have to be a member of the inn to apply, but as I said, you do have to become a member to take the scholarship. Within the applications, they're looking for key skills that they feel that you need to become a barrister, your intellectual ability, so how well you've performed at university is key, your legal research skills, and they want to see evidence of your motivation and serious commitment to succeed at the bar. They'll look at your potential as an advocate, your oral skills, whether you've had experience in mooting, debating, mock trials, and then they'll look at your personal qualities, personality, presentation, integrity, and then for all scholarships they'll look at your financial circumstances and needs. So they are all means-based, most of the scholarships. So Lincoln's Inn, they are currently for the next academic year offering their funding is just over 1.7 million, and that is concentrated on scholarships and bursaries for the bar vocational courses and GDL. The bar vocational course, the funding is around 1.4 million, and they offer about 100 scholarships a year between £6,000 and £20,000. So those awards are unlikely to cover the whole cost of the course fees, and then you've got all of your living expenses, books, computers on top of the actual course fees as well. Some inns, when they offer you a scholarship, they'll also have an award for accommodation at the inn as well, so it's worth looking at that as well. And they have lots of other smaller awards. The applications are online, and if you're successful on the application, they'll invite you in for an interview. So you've just got to be aware of when all the application dates are, deadlines, and having your referees, your references in place. So all of that needs to be on time. The Inner Temple, they offer the largest funding out there. It's just under 1.9 million, with 1.6 million allocated to BVC awards. They're the inn with the largest awards budget, and their scholarships vary. The largest award is £22,000, and they have approximately a couple of £100,000 available for the GDL year. They're the only inn to actually guarantee if you are awarded a scholarship for your GDL, they'll actually give you an award for your equal value for your bar vocational course as well, without a further interview. So if you need funding for both the GDL and the BPT bar vocational course, then there'd be a good inn to look into. Middle Temple, their funding slightly lower. It's about 1.3 million, and 1.1 million is available for the BVC course, and that has the same application process as the other inns, and they interview all of their applicants. And Gray's Inn, where we are now, has the smallest awards, 1.2 million, but their awards are slightly higher. They give a smaller amount of awards out, but their awards are up to 30,000, the average award being just under £20,000. And for the GDL, their maximum award is up to 13,000, with an average award of about 7,300. So I'd definitely do your research, have a look at which inn would appeal to you, and where you think that you might be able to get funding scholarships from the inn. In terms of other sources of finance, there are commercial banks do offer graduate bank loans, and they're all going to offer slightly different rates of interest depending on your circumstances, and they look at obviously what they're lending the loan for, and what your future profession is likely to be. Loans range from £1,000 to £15,000, and they'll look at a suitability assessment. I understand the government-backed student loan scheme, if your bar vocational course is part of a master's degree, then you are able to apply for a loan from the government to fund that. So you just need to make sure that the course you're doing falls into part of a master's degree as well. And the maximum loan there is about £10,800. There is a private enterprise out there called Future Finance, and they're the largest private student loans provider in the UK. they'll lend money from 2,000 to 40,000, covering both tuition fees and living costs. All of the law schools as well, they offer, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, scholarships to really, obviously, excellent students. They won't actually, some of them, if you actually attain a scholarship for an in, then they'll disqualify you from applying for a scholarship from the law school. But some law schools have slightly different rules, so it's worth looking into that as well to see whether you can get a scholarship from an in and a law school as well. The government used to offer money through the Learning Skills Council, but they've just scrapped that scheme recently, so that's not available. And then, as I mentioned, if you do secure a pupillage, then some chambers will offer you the ability to take a part of your pupillage award in advance. So I think the key things from looking at trying to finance your career at the bar is that you really need to be realistic about your own skills and potential. It is such a hugely fiercely competitive market. Obviously, securing pupillage is the key, and that's not particularly easy, depending on which sets you're looking at. So it's what you'd call an expensive, high-risk project. But the rewards, from what I see as an accountant when I look at how well my clients have done every year, for a lot of my clients, the rewards can be really great in terms of not just financially, but from obviously a career perspective as well. So you've just got to be realistic and have a look at the different sources of funding out there, and it's really putting together a sort of different sources to get you through the years of studying, really. So that covers financing your career at the bar. I'm just conscious of time, so I don't want to run over. I just want to sort of put you guys in a time machine, fast forward you a bit, and to the point where you're just about to hopefully start your second six pupillage. I don't know whether you're aware, but all barristers at chambers are deemed to be self-employed. So that puts you into filing self-assessment tax returns each year. And there's sort of some key points that you need to be aware of when you first start trading as a barrister. I would definitely keep receipts for any sort of computer equipment that you're buying just prior to starting pupillage. You might have to buy a wig and gown. You might even buy a home office desk chair. So any sort of assets you purchase even before you start pupillage, keep those receipts, because part of those costs can be offset against your income when you first start trading as a barrister. There's actually 4 taxes that apply to self-employed barristers. The first tax is Class 2 National Insurance. It's just a flat rate tax. It's currently £3 per week, and you pay that once a year when you pay your tax each January. The second tax is VAT, which is a really complicated tax. But just to give you a brief overview of a couple of the main points, you have to register for VAT once your fees that you receive is greater than £85,000. So some chambers, or you can actually register voluntarily at any point in time. So some chambers, when you start your pupillage, will actually, your second six, which is the point that you're deemed to start your self-employment. So the first six is actually any award you receive in your first six is actually tax-free. And then any award that you receive in your second six is taxable. So you should be aware of that. Some chambers will actually front load the pupillage award into your first six, so to reduce obviously the tax that you pay on your pupillage award. So that would be a good thing to discuss with chambers. So from your second six onwards, you're deemed to be self-employed. Chambers may ask you to register for VAT once you start your second six pupillage, or hopefully if you become a tenant, or just leave it in your own hands. So you just need to make sure you do register prior to going over that threshold. There's a hugely financially punitive mistake to make if you go over that and fail to register for VAT. You're actually personally liable for the 20% VAT that should have been charged and wasn't. So I wouldn't want any of my clients to make that mistake. Once you are VAT registered, your clerks charge 20% VAT on top of your fees, and you actually have to file quarterly VAT returns with HMRC that detail the VAT that you've collected on behalf of the government when you've received payment of your case that had VAT charged on it. And then you can reclaim VAT on all the business expenses that you've incurred that had VAT charged on them. So you offset the VAT that you've incurred against the VAT you've collected, and you paid the difference over to HMRC. And those VAT return forms need to be filed on time and correctly, otherwise you're liable to various fines, penalties and surcharges. And one of the real reasons why HMRC inquire into taxpayers' affairs is if they're late with filing their VAT returns or their tax returns. So I'd advise all of you, hopefully if you become self-employed barristers, to make sure you file all of your forms on time. As I've mentioned, keep receipts for any assets you've purchased. You can also claim the VAT. You can go back 4 years prior to the date of VAT registration and claim back VAT on any assets you've purchased for your business. So if you bought a computer and you're using that in your career going forward and it was within that 4-year window, you'll be able to claim the VAT back. So you may on your first VAT return form actually have a VAT refund. So there's a little bit of a cash flow advantage when you first register for VAT. The third and fourth taxes are income tax and class 4 national insurance. They're two separate taxes and they're based on your profits from your self-employed barrister trade. They're calculated separately but paid together. And the only times during the year that you pay these two taxes are on the 31st of January and the 31st of July each year. Each year you're required to file a self-assessment tax return, and that will detail your income and your expenses from your barrister trade. That tax return has to be filed on time, otherwise HMRC will hit you with a £100 penalty if it's filed late, and those penalties do increase significantly over time to the point where they'll charge you £60 a day if it still hasn't been submitted. The actual tax return will detail, as I said, your income and expenses. Your income would include any second six pupillage award. Part of any drawdown and advance of a pupillage award can also be taxable as well, depending on how your pupillage award is structured. So although you're receiving an advance of your pupillage award, part of that could be taxable. Any cases you've received payment for, and some barristers do deviling work for other barristers, so when they receive payment for that work as well. And then you can deduct all the various business expenses you've incurred against your income. So I'm just going to quickly run through all the business expenses you can claim to offset against your income. Sorry about my voice, it's getting a bit croaky. So the main ones that you'll incur are Chambers rent, clerk's fees, Chambers contributions, so whatever Chambers charges you for when you have a room and all the facilities at Chambers. So that's the largest cost that you'll incur. Travel can also be a really large cost for my barrister clients. So, travel would include all public transport, trains, taxis, buses, but you can only claim for your travel from your Chambers to court, home to court, or court to home. You can't claim for your travel from home to Chambers. So it's just worthwhile remembering that. You can claim for subsistence, which is not your breakfast, lunch or dinner, but an occasional snack that you've had to take because you're working unsociable hours. Many of my clients use a car to travel for work, so you can claim for all of the overhead running costs of the vehicle, and you also get tax deductions based on how you own the vehicle as well. If you own it, there's capital allowance deductions, and if you lease it, you can claim the leasing costs as a business expense as well. You'll have all of your sort of office admin costs, so all of my barristers use their mobile phones for business, so you can claim for the business use percentage of your mobile phone bills, your home internet costs. I actually had a barrister, I was having a meeting with him, and he wanted to claim for 100% of his home internet costs. So I asked him, do you not do any personal surfing on the internet at home? And he said he did all of that in chambers and just used his home internet for work. So that was his response to my question. So there'll be all your printing, postage, stationery, computer running expenses. There'll be all your professional costs, so your indemnity insurance, you have to pay for a practicing certificate. There'll be other legal associations you subscribe to. All of your books that you've had to purchase, you'll be able to claim the tax back on that. There'll be training and CPD courses that you incur after you've started your second six, which are tax deductible as well. Court clothing, so wig and, bless you, wig and a gown is you're allowed to claim that as an expense, as are sort of collars, cuffs and bands, but suits, shirts, shoes, blouses that you purchase for your business, unfortunately, they're disallowable for income tax. There's not many cases I know, but there was one a few years ago where it was found that the female barrister, there was a duality to the actual court attire. It kept the barrister warm, decent and clothed as well as for a business, so they disallowed it for tax. But you are legitimately allowed to claim back the VAT that you've incurred on the purchase of a suit that you only ever wear for work. So it's worth keeping those receipts. There'll be other sort of sundry expenses. You might buy a wheelie bag for files, folders, a home office desk lamp, so those sorts of costs. Accountancy fees are tax deductible, and you can also claim for using your home as an office. So if you work from home at all, which pretty much all of my barrister clients do, there's prescriptive an amount you can claim from HMRC, and so we would advise our clients on that as well. So to recap, you'll have your income, less all of your various business expenses, should hopefully give a profit. Otherwise, you might want to think of another profession to pursue. Deducted from that profit figure is your tax-free personal allowance, which is currently £12,500. The next £37,500 worth of profit is taxed at 20%, and anything from 50,000 profit up to 150 is taxed at 40%, and then you've got the higher rate of 45%. Obviously, all this could change in a couple of weeks, and so these are the tax rates at the moment. On top of that, you have to pay Class 4 national insurance, which is 9% of your profits, from just over 8,200 up to 50,000, and anything above that is taxed at 2%. And many of you, I'm sure, will have student loans, so you have to, with your tax each January, pay a student loan repayment as well, and that's based on 9% of profits. I think it's over about 19,000 or 21, depending on, I think it'll be 21 for you guys in terms of when you took out your student loans. So the key piece of information, the golden rule, I tell all my clients, is they need to put money aside for tax while they're earning it. I've seen over the years, unfortunately, that it doesn't matter how brilliant a barrister is at their career, if they don't put the money away for tax while they're earning it, it causes so much stress, and it's just unnecessary stress, really. So I recommend for an average barrister in their first year, they need to put away 20% of whatever they receive into a separate account for tax, not to be touched until the 31st of January. And that would include 20% of your second six pupillage award onwards. In terms of other points, you start losing your tax-free personal allowance once your profits are over £100,000. So there's ways of actually clawing that back and putting money into a pension, which I know won't be your priorities at this point in time, but hopefully in a few years' time, once you've paid off your student debt and bought a property, then you might want to think about pensions. And when you put money into a pension, the government gives you your tax back, so it reduces your tax liabilities by putting money into a pension. The other point I'd also want to mention is you need to keep records of your business income and expenses for tax. And what we recommend, which is the way forward, is using cloud accounting software, because it makes it really relatively straightforward to actually keep records. And we provide our clients with that software, and also an app called Receipt Bank, where you can take photographs of all your receipts, and it keeps a record of that in the software. So any decent accountant will advise you to use some form of cloud accounting software going forward. Other points are you won't have the benefit of what many of your friends may have if they're in employed positions. So you won't have paid sick leave. So you just need to be aware that once you do start trading, if you have got dependents, or you've got a mortgage and a family, if you're in the unfortunate event to have an accident, or you're too sick to work for a prolonged period of time, you do need things like income protection insurance. So that's something that a lot of my clients have to think about. Just saying. And I'd recommend that you, in terms of bank accounts, that you have a business account that you use for all of your business expenses, and you have a separate savings account for tax as well, and then you'd have a separate account for all your personal expenses, and you just pay money from your business account to your personal account. So you'd need to sort of structure all of that when you first start planning. Also, just want to point out that Levene do have a first year free offer for all pupil barristers, where we'll actually do everything for you for the first year. So we'll provide the software, we do all of your bookkeeping and VAT returns, your year-end accounts and your tax return. So it means you don't have to worry about anything during your first year. We're exhibiting, we're stand 25 in the Bingham room, but if you do want to, if you've got any specific questions for me that you don't want to discuss in the open forum, I'm happy to answer those. I'm just conscious of time. I just want to open the floor to any questions that you might have for me on sort of financing your career or on the tax side of things, but also just want to wish you all the very best for your studies and whatever professions you go into. Thank you very much.
Anyone has any questions? Just feel free to put your hands up. You've still got 12 minutes of the talk left. So.
Okay, so I've sort of whizzed through that quite quickly.
I'm sure we're on.
Yeah.
You mentioned your first year offer, obviously that was for free for 30
yeah.
Beyond that, what's your kind of rate? What are you charging?
That's a very good question. So it depends on sort of how much you want from us. So some of our barrister clients, they do their own VAT returns. So we charge £100 plus VAT per quarter if the barrister wants us to do their VAT returns for them. And then our fees are probably between, on average, £650 to £750 plus VAT per annum to do the year-end accounts and the tax return and a meeting with us each year and any ad hoc advice during the year. We register all of our clients for self-assessment and VAT and Class 2 national insurance at no cost, so we do all of that as well. And the cost of the software is it's £15 plus VAT per month for the software after the first year, which is a massive discount off what you get if you went directly to the providers.
So I apologise if my maths is off, but that should equal roughly about £1,500–1,600 a year?
Yeah, just under that, yeah. So, yeah, which is all tax deductible. So. And I sort of look at it that when you're looking at the fees and accountant charges, you should also look at potentially, it's difficult, but how much tax they're likely to save you as well. So obviously we specialise with barristers, so we know exactly what expenses we can claim, and other accountants who don't necessarily deal with barristers won't always get all of the expenses, so you might pay a slightly lower fee, but then you end up paying more tax. So it's sort of having a look at it globally rather than just purely on the fees.
Is that something that you would do automatically, or would you have a discussion with the client, because someone might be morally opposed to that kind of?
Morally opposed to? No, you're allowed to claim back no, we're just making sure you claim for all the expenses that you've incurred. So they're all legitimate expenses. They're incurred in the course of your business. So you just might forget not to claim for certain expenses. So accountants that don't necessarily specialise with barristers, they might miss certain things that you would incur that we know you incur. So we just make sure that you don't miss any of those. Yeah. Has anyone got any other questions? No. Well.
Thank you very much, Mason. As you said, if you have any other questions, feel free to find me Sam 25.
Yes.
I'll send them.
And I've got brochure and my card here as well, if anyone wants to grab one of those. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.